All right. So the next
Rabi, can we record the session? Okay, it's recording now.
yeah,
Okay.
started it. Yeah. So I quickly want to talk about some of the benefits that your S3 provides. So obviously it provides you 99.99 percentage availability of your data. So Amazon guarantees you that 99.99 percentage of the time your data will be available. That's at any point when you try accessing your data will be available. Then 99.99999, aka 11 nines durability. So how durable your data is, right? So that's like 100 percentage for you. It provides you with the tiered storage. So like your standard frequently accessed, standard infrequently accessed, one zone infrequently accessed, intelligent tiering. So likewise you have different storage classes. You have this lifecycle management. We'll be talking about this today, and this will help you to handle the data and objects. It provides you versioning with versioning, which is kind of a backup option for you. It provides you data transfer acceleration, so enables quick, simple, and secure file transfer over long distances between end users and an S3 bucket by leveraging CloudFront. And then you can secure the access to your data by making use of ACLs and bucket policies. Again, we will be talking about that today, even to the granular level or at the object level. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is your access. Now, by default, whenever you create your S3 bucket, the public access is denied. By default, the URL that is associated with your object, right? So every object that you will upload will have a URL associated with that. So by default, your data is private. So even if you try accessing that URL over the internet, it won't work. You will get an access denied error because your data is private by default. All right. So let me quickly show that. Okay, so I'll go to the S3 bucket and I'll create one more new bucket just to show you by default what you get and how it looks like. So this is the bucket I've created in the last session. So we'll create one more bucket and let me again call this as bucket one. And so you see this one, block public access settings for this bucket. So by default, it will be block all public access. All right. So even if someone has a URL, okay, they won't be able to access the data because by default your S3 is designed to reject it. Okay, so they won't be able to access any data. So let's say I will create this bucket. Now if you want to make the data public at any point, you will have to go with this option, ACLs enabled. This is what will allow you to give necessary permission so that you can make data public. So we will go with these options and then you can click on create bucket and this should create the bucket for you. So over here under access, you can see it says bucket and objects are not public, and here it says objects can be public. So this is the bucket we created in the last session. All right, so by default, so let's say now I will upload some data here. So just some test data. So let's call that as index. So this will have a URL associated with that. And by default, if you try accessing, it will not work. So I'll close this. And when I click on this object, I should have a URL. And if I try accessing this URL, by default, I will get this. Okay, so you can see access denied, access denied. So by default, it will not work. So even if you have some data in your S3 bucket, and even if someone has a URL to that, by default, they won't be able to access it. But let's say you want to make this public, you want to give access to this. That's where under permissions, you can manage that. So first, you'll have to remove this. Okay, so block all public access, you'll have to edit it and you'll have to remove this. Now again, you can go with a very granular permission. So block the public access to buckets and objects granted through ACLs. Block public access to buckets and objects granted through any access controls. Block public access. So you have different options available over here. So we will open all the permissions and we will confirm this. And now you will see that it will say bucket and objects not public. Okay, so now what it is telling me is, so let me refresh this. Yeah, so now you see it says objects can be public. That means I can make the objects public. Now, though I have removed that block public access, you'd still see that I'm getting an access denied error. So here you can clearly see it says objects can be public. That means now I can make the objects public. So at any point, if you want to make any objects public, you'll have to explicitly, one option is you'll have to explicitly go to that object under actions. You will see this make public using ACL. So we'll talk about your ACL more, but when you click on this and when you confirm this, now your object will be public. So whatever this object you have, if I try accessing that once again, I will be able to access the data inside that. Questions?
No.
No, sir.
All right. Now, the other ways that you can control the permissions to S3 bucket, one option you have is your bucket policy, and then you also have this ACLs. Sorry. So the bucket policies are nothing but your JSON document. So let's say, for example, you want to give access to this S3 bucket to other AWS accounts or to specific IAM users or to specific roles. Then we can make use of your bucket policy. So here you will be generally, you can make use of this to automatically add the statement. So let's say the service would be S3. And then under this, what actions you want to allow. So let's say I want to allow list bucket access so that people can see the bucket. And then I also want to allow get object access. So let's say get object. So get object ACL. So all this permission. So likewise, if you want to give write access to this so that I can upload the data. So I can go with put object access, which will allow me to put the data. Then you can also restrict this to whom you want to allow this access. So resource type, like you want to allow like, for a specific bucket or a specific object. So let's say I want to allow this for a specific object. And what is the bucket name? So my bucket name would be this one. Okay, so I will take this and I will provide that over here. I will add this. Let me remove this, sorry. And I'll add this. So what I'm telling here is I'm for this S3 bucket, I'm allowing this access, which is ideally the bucket that we have allowed over here, right? So that's what you can do over here. So all resource means I'm basically allowing it for any of the bucket. Does that make sense? Questions?
No.
One minute, I think this looks to be wrong. Okay, that is still throwing me an error. So it looks fine. Specify principles. What? One moment. Sorry. Sorry. accidentally closed it. Okay. Statement. Actions. So that looks fine, and then save changes. Okay, so principal. So here this particular thing. So this principal would be who gets this access. So let's say, for example, you want to give access to a user or a role or anyone basically. That is where your principal will come in. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to take the ARN of that user. So let's say, okay, I have a couple of users. So let's say Prokshit. So there will be a ARN available. So I'll take that ARN and I will provide that in the principal. Okay, so I'm telling I want to allow Prokshit access to this S3 bucket. This on syntax error. Valid principal format. Okay. Okay, let me generate a policy. So AWS also has this tool called policy generator, which can be used to easily generate your IAM policies. So select type of policy. So in our case, we want to generate a S3 bucket policy. So you want to allow the access or you want to deny the access. And then who gets the access. So let's say this will be my principal. And then for which service you want to allow the access. So it is already selected S3, but if you want to give access to some other services, you'll be using OTK. And then what actions you want to allow. So let's say I want to allow create job, create bucket access. And then this will be your resource name, meaning like on which bucket you want to allow this access. So let's say I want to allow this access on this bucket. So I'll take that ARN, I will provide here. And then when you click on add statement, this will automatically generate a JSON policy for me. I think this is what I was missing. So now I'll simply take that and I can add it over here. This also works. Okay, so basically now Prokshit will get the access. So likewise, let's say I want to add Bharat as well. So I can get the ARN of Bharat and I can add that. I can add that here as well. And then I can save this. Policy has invalid action. I just want these two policies. Actions cannot affect any resources and state. Resources. Oh, what am I missing?
So while creating a policy in IAM, so we had two options, like one is from the visual editor and from the JSON editor, right? So why not we don't have that option like visual editor? That would be more convenient, right? I mean the policy generator.
Yeah, so you can use that also. Like for example, okay, that is slightly different, and this is
Okay.
slightly different. All right. Uh,
Okay.
the JSON policies that we have in the IAM, the way they are structured is slightly different. Now, if
Okay.
you observe over here, so let's say the permissions, and if you look at this JSON document, here nowhere you find the principal. So you don't have,
Correct.
you have said effect, action, and resource only. But with the
Okay.
REST package, if you say we have this additional field called principal. The principal is
Uh-huh.
basically who gets the access. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a slight difference with the policy, with the design of the policy. So that's why you don't
Okay.
have the option over here
Okay.
because of this additional thing. Now I'm just thinking why action does not apply to any resources. Given my resource, yeah, I'll have to see. Policy as invalid resource. I don't know why it would. Need a comma. Yeah, okay. I'll figure this out, but that's the point of this. You will be writing a JSON document like this, which can be used to control the access to the particular S3 bucket. So you know who gets the access. Let's say you want to allow access from another AWS account or an IAM role or an IAM user. We can make use of your bucket policies for that. Does this make sense?
Yeah, got it.
Yes, sir.
All right. And the other option you have is your ACL. So ACL, it stands for access control. So there are two ways you can control the permissions. One is your bucket policies, which is your JSON documents, and then you have your ACLs, which is your access control list. So by default, the bucket owner, the one who created this bucket, me in this case, will have full access. So objects, I'll have list and write access. Bucket ACLs, which is controlling the permissions, I will have read and write access. Now, from here, I can edit it, and if I want to give access to other people, so let's say I want to give public access to other people, I can give that access. So I full list access and full read access. However, you don't get the write access. Or if you want to restrict this to only users, AWS users, so authenticated user groups, anyone with an AWS account. So only if you have an AWS account, then you can read this and list. But again, this is a full permission, but the condition is you will need to have an AWS account. And then the last you have is you can also give access to other AWS accounts. So here I can add grantee. So we have something known as your canonical ID. So like how you have your AWS account ID, if you go to this, I think under security credentials, you will have this additional information called canonical ID. All right, which is again kind of an account identifier for you. So we will use this canonical ID and we will be providing that over here. And then again, what access you want to give, we can do that. So this is another way for you to make your buckets public, make your objects public, or give access to other people. So like, you don't want to use this JSON policies. This is other way you have. This is at a very high level. More permissions will be given with this, but if you want granular permissions, That's where you can make use of your questions.
No.
All right. So it's a common interview question. How can you control the access to your S3 bucket? So there are two ways you can make use of the bucket policies, and you can make use of your ACLs, which stands for access control list. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is your metrics. So again, for metrics, what is the service that you use? Yes. For monitoring, what is the service that we use?
CloudWatch.
Yeah. So here also your CloudWatch is utilized as part of your monitoring. All right. So here you can see it is using a CloudWatch. So in this case, it monitors two things. One is your total bucket size, and the other one is your total number of objects. Now, depending on when this bucket was created, this will take some time to reflect the data. However, if you look at the other bucket, I might have some metrics to show. Yeah. So you last class we had discussed about your server access logging. So these files that you see, this is your logs that are being generated. So if I try opening this in the browser, let me see if I can open that in the browser. Mm, yeah, so this is the log that gets generated. So which bucket, date and time, your server, this one I'm not sure. What HTTP call we did, what is the response, and then you can also see some information about which OS was used. So basically, this log that gets generated for you. So the main thing you'll have to look at is this one: what HTTP call you are doing, what is the response code, when this was done, from where the request came. So all this information will be maintained in your logs. Okay. But yeah, so coming back to your metrics, so here you should be able to see what is your total bucket size. So as of this is yesterday, I guess, because today is 24th, so this is yet to be updated. So this is 2.2 MB in size, and this is the number of objects. So I have 4,265 objects in this S3 bucket. There are a few additional charts. I don't know, but actually there are only two charts. So these are two things that you'll have. So let's say for the last 1 week, this is what we have, all right, and maybe for the last 1 day that the data is not available. Okay, so again, this is your monitoring. So at any point, if you want to see what is the total size of your bucket, or if you want to see what is the total number of objects you have on the bucket, you can make use of this. Questions?
No.
The next thing I want to talk about is your management. Now, management can be used to manage your S3 bucket. So the first thing we have is your lifecycle rules. Now, in the last session, I told you about your different storage classes, right? So we have your standard frequently accessed, standard infrequently accessed. Okay. So you have your standard frequently accessed, you have standard infrequently accessed, you have one zone infrequently accessed, you have intelligent hiring, you have Glacier, you have Glacier Archive, you have Glacier Deep Archive, and then you have your RRS, which stands for Reduced Redundancy Storage. So these are the different types you have. By default, whenever you're uploading your data gets stored in this standard frequently accessed. And under the free tier, we can use only this option. If you choose any other options, sorry, only this one. If you choose any other options, you'll have to pay money for that under the free tier. Now, let's say you want to have an automatic transition of your data. So by default, my data gets stored here. But let's say after 90 days, I want to automatically move my data to this storage class. And then again, after a certain number of days, I want to move the data to this storage class, and then so on. or from this storage class to this storage class. Then I can make use of your lifecycle rules. So lifecycle rule helps you to create an automated way to automatically move the data from one storage class to another storage class after a specified number of days. So with this, you'll be creating a rule, and you can give a name. And again, is this applicable to specific objects or all the objects? So let's say all the objects. I acknowledge this, and then here you define the rules. Now, if you have enabled versioning, you'll have both the options. So current versions as well as your non-current version. So first we will define it for, let's say, the current versions, and what is your rule. By default, I told you that whatever the data you upload, it will be in the standard frequently accessed. So here you don't see the, so here you don't see the standard option. So the next option, so you'll have the other options. All right. So now, where do you want to transition the data? So let's say I want to transition it to my standard infrequently accessed. Now, there is a minimum number of days that you'll have to wait before you can transition the data. So your data should be available in the standard frequently access for a minimum of 30 days before it can be transitioned. So I want to move my data to standard infrequently accessed after 30 days of object creation. So after 30 days, it will move to standard infrequently accessed automatically. Then let's say I want to move it to one zone infrequently accessed after 30 days, another 30 days. And then let's say I want to move it to my deep glacier archive, let's say after 180 days, right? So this becomes your life cycle transition. So, first, let's say day one, I'll upload the data. After 30 days, it will move to standard frequently accessed. Again, after another 30 days, it will move to one zone. And then after 180 days, it will move to deep glacier archive. This one you'll have to acknowledge. So this is basically giving you a warning, telling that even if it's a small object, you'll have to pay the minimum cost. So that's fine. And then you also have the option to delete the object. So you can say permanently delete, or sorry, expire current versions of objects. So after a certain number of days, you can specify. So let's say after 730 days, which is 2 years, I'm telling delete the data. So this becomes my transition. So day 0 object will be uploaded. Day 30 it will move to one zone standard IA. Day 30 it will move to one zone IA. Day 180 it will move to Glacier Deep Archive. Day 730 it will be set to expire. Likewise, if you want to set this rule for your non-current versions, we can do that also. So okay. So here again, it's the same thing, but this will be for your non-current versions. So let's say intelligent tiering, and then after how many days? Let's say 30 days, and then how many newer versions you want to maintain. So this can be up to 100. So let's say I want to maintain 10. Likewise, you can add additional transitions. So let's say I want to move this to Glacier Deep Archive after 180 days, and then maintain 10 versions of the objects. I acknowledge this, and then again, when do you want to expire the object? So permanently delete non-current versions after, let's say, 1000 days, and then number of newer versions to retain, let's say 10. So this will be for my current version, and this will be my non-current version. And then when I click on create rule, okay, sorry, so this should be 60. Create rule, and that will create a lifecycle rule for me. So now whatever the data that I will upload after the specified number of days, it will automatically transition from one storage class to another storage class. Questions?
So what if the data is modified in between?
So again, it will look at the modified date status basically. So this
Okay.
one.
Okay. So it will consider the last modified date or like the file creation date?
So last modified date is what it will consider here.
Okay. Okay,
So
got it.
basically, it will see whether the data has been updated or not. So if you're updating the data, that means you're using that data. So S3 will not look at that. Only if it's like an unused data and you're not working with it, just to reduce the cost, it will move the data to the other storage classes.
Okay, got it. So it's based on the modified data.
Yes. Any other questions with the lifecycle rule? Okay. Next, we have your replication rules. Now, replication rules can be used when you want to set up a like a primary, secondary S3 buckets. Like, if you want to make your for disaster recovery, for example, let's say. So, let's say by accident you delete the S3 bucket and you want to recover the data. Now, what do we do? So, for that, you can maintain like an active passive setup or a primary, secondary setup by making use of this replication rule. So, under this, you will be having two S3 buckets. All right. So one will be considered as your source and the other will be considered as your destination. Now with your replication rules, what happens is whatever the data that you will upload to your source bucket, it will automatically get replicated in the destination bucket. Okay. So making your data highly available. That can be done with your replication rules. So again, we give a name to this, your status, and again, what's your source bucket? So in my case, where we are creating this rule, that will be considered as my source bucket. And then again, is this applicable to specific objects or all the objects? And then your destination bucket. Now the destination bucket can be in the same AWS account. It can be in a different AWS account as well. Like, let's say whenever I upload some data in my bucket, it should get replicated in your AWS accounts S3 bucket. We can do that also. All right. So let's go with this. And here we can select my other S3 bucket. And one condition for this is versioning must be enabled on both the buckets, your source as well as your destination. And then you will need to have a role for this. So just go with this one, choose from existing IAM role. So AWS will take care of that. You also have the encryption option. So what happens is by default, if there are any objects that are encrypted, that will not get replicated. So let's say in the source bucket, you have some encrypted data that will not get replicated. However, if you still want to replicate it, you will have to provide your encryption keys. So here you can see replicate objects encrypted with AWS KMS. So you'll need to provide the KMS key over here. In our case, we have not encrypted it, so we don't need that. And then your storage class. Now by default, whatever the storage class you have in your source bucket, the same storage class will be used in the destination bucket as well. However, let's say if you want to choose the storage class in the destination bucket, you can choose. I would not, I would don't suggest you to mess with this, because if you choose any other option, you might get charged for it. Then you can set a time control for the replication. You can ask for metrics. You can have this delete marker replication, meaning if I'm deleting something in the source, I want that to be replicated in the destination. And then replica modification sync. So if I'm modifying something, I want that also to be replicated. And then click on save. And this, okay, so this will okay, so we are going with this create new role, and then we will save this. So this will create my replication rule. Now by default, your existing objects that you have, that will not get replicated. Only the new objects will get replicated. But if you want to replicate the existing objects as well, you can select this and AWS will copy the existing objects as well. But in our case, let's say I don't want that, and we'll submit this, and now my replication rule is created. Now, before I do something, so this is my destination bucket, and give me one moment. Let me stop this because it is. So I'm stopping the server access logging, and I'm going to delete everything from here. So you see this empty option. You can use that to delete all the objects in a single shot. So that will go ahead and delete the 4,000 odd objects that I have. Oh, I have more than that. Okay. Okay, so I had 8,181 objects. So all the objects are deleted. So now I don't have anything. This is empty. So now let's say I'll upload something in my source bucket. So let's upload, and maybe I will upload this error document, and the same data will be replicated in my destination bucket as well. So here I have the source, and now the destination, it may take some time. It's not synchronous, it is asynchronous. So you might see a delay of maybe a few seconds, but eventually the data will get replicated in the destination bucket as well. It shouldn't be taking so much of time. Hmm, let's see if I have time. Okay, so there's my, so it took some time, but there's my object. So this is the destination bucket, and this one is my source bucket. So this is basically your replication rules. Questions?
No.
No, sir.
All right. The next option we have is your inventory configurations. Now this can be used if you want to generate some kind of a report. All right, so you can give a name to this, and again you can restrict this to specific objects. In my case, let's say all the objects, and I want to see only the current version. And where do you want to save this report? So you want to save this in the same account or in a destination account, like in another AWS account, and then in which bucket do you want to save this report? Now, how frequently do you want this? Daily, weekly? In what format do you want it? And do you want to encrypt it as well? Now, by default, it will have some information for you, all right? Like your bucket details and all. But if you want some additional details as to the size, the last modified time, encryption status, your storage class, all this information, you can create this. And what this will do is this will start pushing an inventory, Excel sheet basically, with all the details. So what is the total size, how many objects you have, whether the bucket is encrypted or not, when was the data updated, all that information will be available to you as a report. But this will take about 48 hours to generate the report, but eventually this will be available in the S3 bucket that you have specified. Questions?
No.
No, sir.
All right. Now, whatever we have seen until now, the properties, the permissions, the management, and everything, all these are at the bucket level. So it is applicable to all the objects. However, if you want to manage the properties or the permissions at a object level, we can do that also. So, let's say you want to enable versioning only for one object, we can do that. Replication control, you have the storage class, you can change the storage class from here. You can encrypt only one object, you can add your tags, all this can be done. Likewise, if you want to set the permission, so let's say you want to allow access only to this object, not any other objects, you can make use of your ACLs. And under versions here, you should be able to see different versions. If you have enabled versions, you should be able to see all the versions of the data over here. This is at the object level. Pretty much that's all I have as part of your S3 bucket. Now, at any point, if you want to delete your S3 bucket, you'll have to first delete all the data inside the S3 bucket. So you'll have to empty this only then. So when you're deleting the bucket should be empty. That's the point. So one option you have is you can select the bucket, and here you can see this empty, and you can type this permanently delete, and this will go ahead and delete all the objects in the S3 bucket, and then you can go ahead and delete the bucket. So it will ask you to provide the bucket name, and once you provide the bucket name, the bucket will be deleted. And also, when you go inside the bucket, here you have the option of copying the URL. You can download the object from here. You can open this. You can delete it from here. And under actions, you have a few more things. So share a pre-signed URL and how long this is going to be available. So let's say I want this available for 30 minutes, and create a pre-signed URL. Copy to your clipboard. Okay, so copy pre-signed URL. So this will be a HTTPS. Okay, so basically it will be encrypted for us. So it's a pre-signed URL. So not it is time bound. All right. So whatever the time bound we have given, it will be available for that duration. Then you can see this calculate total size. What is the total size of the object? Then you have copy. So you can copy this object from one S3 bucket to another S3 bucket. You can cut and paste it. So you can move this to another S3 bucket. You also have this query with S3 select. So this gives you a query option as well. So let's say you have like huge data in that object. In this case, the error.html file, right? You can run queries as well, and you can get the results. Okay, so here you can see this is the result. So select star from S3 object, yes, and then limit it to 5 lines is what we are telling here. Okay, so likewise you have different queries. So like select star from S to object S, where S underscore n equals to xyz. So filtering it, we can do that also. So let's say I want to see the count, to append this, and now I want to run this once again. So you see I have one line inside that. So I can make use of your SQL queries, S3 queries as well for that. Then I have renaming the object, changing the storage class, changing encryption, adding the metadata, the tags, and making the bucket public. Sorry, the object public. That's all I have as part of your S3 bucket. Any questions, let me know.
No.
No, sir.
All right, so that completes your S3 bucket. We'll quickly start off with another service. Shouldn't take much time to complete that. So the next thing we are going to look at is your Glacier. So any idea what is a Glacier service?
No.
Have you heard about it?
No.
No, you heard it over here, no?
Yeah.
So again, coming back to your different types of storage types. All right, so we have your block based, and then we have your object based. So S3 is block based or object based?
S3 is object and block based is EBS, right?
You tell me, I don't know. I'm asking you. Yeah. S3 is object based or block based?
Like S3 is object based.
Yeah, so S3 is object. Be confident with what you're trying to answer. Okay.
Yeah.
So S3 is object based and EBS is your block based.
Yeah.
Likewise, we have your Glacier, which is tape based. So we have your block based, we have object based, and then we have your tape based. So EBS and Instant Store is your block based, S3 is your object based, and Glacier is a tape based. So to give you an example of your tape based storage, in the earlier days, we used to have your cassettes, right? Tape recorder cassettes. And those cassettes used to have these reels, right? That is your typical tape based storage. Make sense?
Yeah.
So Glacier is an extremely low-cost storage service that provides secure, durable, and flexible storage for data backup and data archival. So at any point in AWS, if you're talking about your data backup or data archival, we are typically talking about your Glacier service. So at any point, if you want to back up your data for a longer duration, or if you want to archive your data for a longer duration, like 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, right? You don't need it now, but you might need it in the future. So you want to archive it. That's where we can make use of your Glacier service. So with Glacier, customers can reliably store their data for as little as $1 per terabyte per month. So it's a very cheap storage option you have. Glacier enables customer to offload the administrative burdens of operating and scaling storage in AWS so that they don't have to worry about capacity planning, hardware provisioning, data replication, hardware failure deletion and repair, or time consuming hardware migration. So the advantage of this is that you don't have to worry about the admin part of this. You don't have to worry about the infrastructure. You don't have to worry about the scaling. You don't have to worry about the hardware. Everything will be taken care by your AWS. Now, generally, when we talk about your data can be categorized into two types. We have your hot data, and then you have your cold data. Any idea what is hot data and what is cold data?
No, sir.
Okay.
No.
So hot data is any data that you need immediate access. Cold data is data that is not readily available. So your hot data will be readily available for you and you can access it whenever you want. Cold data is not readily available for you. You will have to retrieve the data. So it will take some time before the data is available. So S3 is a typical example for your hot data. Glacier is a typical example for your cold data. So just to make it more clear, if you have used cassettes in the older days, you might remember that whenever we insert the cassettes in the tape recorder and we click on the play button, the song wouldn't play immediately, right? The reel starts rotating and it takes few seconds to start the song. That is nothing but your tape recorder is retrieving the data. So there is a delay before the data is available. Have you seen that behavior?
Yeah, I remember.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
I
so
remember.
that is typically your Glacier service. So that's how your Glacier also works. Your data is available, but you'll have to first retrieve that data, which is basically there is a delay before the data is available for you. So hot data is that you need rapid access, that is you need immediate access, and cold data is used for archiving the data, and there is a delay in retrieval time. So Glacier is used for your cold data. Okay, so you can send data from SDK's tape dataset, and again there is no maximum limit to the total number of data that can be stored in Glacier. However, individual archives are limited to a maximum of 40 terabytes. So like how in S3 we have a limitation on each object, Glacier has a limitation on each archive, which is maximum of 40 terabytes. So you can have multiples of 40 terabytes, but each of that archive can be a maximum of 40 terabytes. Any questions until here?
No.
No, sir.
Okay. So you can search for this service called Glacier. So here S3 Glacier. So this is part of one of the storage class you have for your S3, but this is available as a separate service altogether. All right. So here this is what you will see. So first you'll have to begin. So like how in S3 we create your buckets, in Glacier we call it as your vault. So Glacier provides a console which can be used to create and delete vaults. So we can use this. So to begin with this, you'll have to first create a vault. So give it a name, and then you want to set up notification. So we'll come to that in some time, and then click on create vault. Now using this console, we can create a vault and we can delete a vault. But unlike your S3 bucket, all right, where we can upload the data from the console, with your Glacier, we cannot upload the data from the console. So for all other interactions, you will have to use the CLI or you'll have to write the code. For example, to upload data such as photos or videos, you must use the CLI or write code to make requests by using the REST API or by using the SDK. So basically, with the console, you don't have access to the to upload the data. You can only create the archive and you can delete the archive, but you cannot upload the data from the UI. You'll have to make use of your CLI, or you'll have to write some program for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So your vault is a container for storing archives, and an archive is nothing but an object. So your vault is a collection of archives, and your archives are simply a collection of objects. The data that you store in the S3 bucket, it's a collection of that. We won't be seeing an example for this, but just so you understand, you might get one or two interview questions or certification questions from this. So just at a high level, that is what it is. Now, so here you can see the details of it. So what's the name, in which region this is created, when this was created, and the ARN. And if you want to enable notifications, so you can enable it, and then again you can make use of an existing topic, or you can create a new topic, and then here you should be able to see the topic that we have used in the last session. And then when do you want to receive the notifications? When an archive retrieval job completes, or when an vault inventory retrieval job completes, right? So typically, with your Glacier, it can be anywhere between a few minutes to few hours to retrieve the data. So depending on the size of the data. So you can see here, typically this takes 3.5 to 4 hours. So if you want to get a notification telling that okay, the job has completed, you can make use of this. Then you have your tags, all right. So and you have your policies. So if you want to share this Glacier with other users, we can make use of this. So this is your vault policy, which is again a JSON document that you can define. So if you want to give access to IAM users or other accounts, we can provide that. And then you have this lock policy. So if you want to protect your vault from accidental deletion, we can make use of this vault lock, which will kind of who can use it, who cannot use this, who can delete it. All that policy can be set so that we don't have any accidental deletion of the vaults. And again, when you want to delete this vault, you have to make sure it does not have any data. If it has a data, you won't be able to delete it. Only when the vault is empty. So here you can see this one, the size. I mean, obviously as of now, I don't have any data, but the condition is that the vault has to be empty. Only then you will be able to delete it. So pretty much that's all I have as part of your Glacier. So once again, Glacier is your archival service. You can use this to for data backup or data archival purpose. And again, there's always a retrieval time associated with it. The data is not readily available for you. You'll have to kind of kick in a job which will retrieve the data for you. And once the data is retrieved, only then you will be able to access it. That's all with your Glacier service. Any questions?
No.
No, sir.
Cool. I think pretty much that's all for today. Tomorrow we will be starting off with your CLI. So so whatever we are doing here, this is over the console, right? So everything that we are doing here, this is the console. This is the AWS management console. And I told you earlier that there are different ways that you can work with the console. So one is obviously the AWS management.
CLI SDK API.
Right. So you have CLI, you have SDKs, then you have API calls. So there are different ways, right? So tomorrow I'll show you how you can make use of the CLI, the command line interface, to work with AWS. So we'll look at some of the commands, some of the examples of how we can work with AWS using the command line. Okay. And post that, we will be starting off with the other services. That's all I have for today. If there are any questions, let me know. If not, then I'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Ravi, like one thing I wanted to inform,
Yeah.
like can we
Yeah.
have that class on like Monday and Tuesday for the next 2 weeks? Because like next week me and Sedu are going to Kerala for my classmate's wedding, so we
Oh,
won't be
Sedu
there
is also
from like Wednesday to Sunday.
okay. So,
So
Bharat, will you be available on Monday, Tuesday?
Yeah,
yeah,
sir, I'm
I
available.
spoke to Bharat, so he said like we can manage for 2 weeks.
2 days, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if you guys are available, then I don't have any problem.
Okay.
So we can have the class on Monday and Tuesday the next week.
Okay.
And then
Thank you
once
so
you
much.
guys
Thank you
are
so
back,
much, guys, for
no
understanding.
problem. And then once you guys are back, then we'll go back to the regular schedule that we have.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys tomorrow then.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.